No sé qué ha pasado, 2 años pasaron, regresé a tu lado y tú ya no estás. Tus cartas me dieron ternura y aliento, dijiste te espero, regresa mi amor. Pero Laura ya no vive aquí, Laura ya no vive aquí, Laura ya no vive aquí, Laura se olvidó de ti. ¿A dónde te has ido? ¿A quién te he perdido? Creí que lo mío te haría feliz y ahora regreso y yo no te encuentro. Llegué por tu casa y me dicen así, pero Laura ya no vive aquí, Laura ya no vive aquí, Laura ya no vive aquí, Laura ya se fue de aquí. Pasaron los años y ya me he casado, ya tengo 2 niños y soy muy feliz. Ayer caminando pasé por tu casa y el triste recuerdo me atormenta así. Pero Laura ya no vive aquí, Laura ya no vive aquí, Laura ya no vive aquí, Laura ya se fue de aquí, Laura ya se fue de aquí, Laura ya se fue de aquí.
Preservation is going back to the ideals and the ideas of early America and what we had made and what it took to make it. You don't find these buildings anymore with the fancy Victorian pillars, and just the architecture of early America was something else. And Las Vegas is uniquely different because it was Victorian.
The railroad brought in the great boomtown era. The town declined because of time, neglect, external forces. Great buildings were being torn down. There is a period of rebirth. It's as if the buildings spoke to the people. The people are responding.
1909 was a beautiful sunny day, and the snow was at least 5 or 6 inches deep. It was a bright sunny day. Came in here about 1 o'clock on train number 1. The first meal I had was at the Bismarck Cafe, the side of Red Avenue, the second building next to the Annex Bar on Railroad.
Well, as men came over the Santa Fe Trail to Las Vegas, they produced nearly everything from the resources of their environment. They raised their own food on their small strips of land. They grazed sheep. From the wool, they made cloth and clothing. And by great ingenuity and great labor, they got almost everything from their environment.
The Spanish came in 1540. There's Pueblo influence. It's a mezcla. It's a mix of different cultural strains that have come together at this point and other points in the state to create a unique culture.
Soon after the plaza was delineated, the people began to build their houses around it. Well, then as the trade on the Santa Fe Trail increased here, and this became a more important trading center, merchants bought those houses, tore them down, and built business buildings. And then the plaza became an arena for the parking of wagons that traded at those stores. The merchants raised some money and hired Orlando Schmidt to build a windmill. And it worked for a little while, but soon went dry. The principal utility of the thing turned out to be that the derrick was a conspicuous place for vigilantes to hang their culprits.
Culpable, soy culpable. Oh, sí, soy culpable por causarte dolor.
I think one studies history to try and determine one's own role within it. Try and glean an understanding of what one's life could be.
Well, I came here in 1928, went to work for the Santa Fe Railroad. We had the Castaneda up there. That was a railroad hotel and restaurant. See? Castaneda Restaurant. Fred Harvey. Remember Fred Harvey? You've heard of Fred Harvey. Okay.
After the railroad arrived here, this was a terminal for a short while, so naturally they made it a division headquarters and built a small roundhouse. They enlarged it a little before the turn of the century because those old steam locomotives had to be serviced at every few hundred miles that they ran. That roundhouse was filled with locomotives and others waiting outside for this servicing. Well, what became of it? The introduction of diesel locomotives, as everyone knows, put an end to it because they did not need to be serviced so regularly at such frequent intervals. And therefore that led soon to the abandonment of Las Vegas as a division point and the removal from here of hundreds of railroad employees.
We had, I don't remember the exact number, but we had about 1, 2, 3, 4 gambling halls within a distance of a block. Wide open gambling.
Las Vegas did experience 2 or 3 decades of boomtown growth in which a great many very handsome buildings were erected.
There are very few towns in the country which have preserved the amount of architecture that Las Vegas has. Because Las Vegas was, for a period, so wealthy, it had much finer architecture. The poor economy over the last 35 or 45 years has been of great benefit to preservation because those buildings were simply ignored.
With the opening of traffic by railway beginning in July 1879, a great transformation occurred here. This became then the leading commercial center for New Mexico. People came here to trade from clear up in Raton and southern Colorado, as far south as Carlsbad. 2 great mercantile houses were built immediately by the railroad tracks. Hillfells was already operating on the plaza, and it grew into the leading mercantile establishment in the territory with branches in 14 other towns. The volume of trade must have been great considering the wealth that it produced. The way, one of the evidences of this wealth was the fine buildings that they built. with the materials and workmanship that we just couldn't touch today. Mostly in the Victorian style, and some of them with that wonderful stone carving on the front. It's a real relic. So when I think of preservation, I think of not only a preservation of style, but preservation of materials. It has hurt me to see a building like the old Opera House torn down and a lot of beautiful hardwood chopped up by somebody for fuel.
Las Vegas is typical of certain towns in the country that have been economically bypassed. Fortunately, many of our significant buildings still stand because of this. Some people see it as a blight instead of a blessing. Certainly there's a significant resource here to work with. The Kiva was built in 1912. I like to think that the Kiva is the oldest continuously operating theater in the state. I've been working to restore the interior and the facade of the Kiva. It's always been associated with the film history of this town. Tom Mix came in and made some of the earliest Western movies around Las Vegas. The Duncan Opera House was a very great stone building, and it was a massive building. It had a balcony. It was torn down for a parking lot. The Coronado Theater was just up the street on 6th Street, a block away from the Duncan Opera House. It had a great facade and a balcony too, and it's just totally been transformed. It's a warehouse now.
We thought to ourselves, what an ugly town, you know, there's nothing but old buildings and we don't want to have anything to do with it. It's just not a very beautiful sight. And when we were in other towns, we realized just what we were missing.
The first phase would be the facade. And then from there, hopefully each year we'll have, you know, a different project worked on until the whole building is restored.
That park has more history than all the other plazas in the state put together. What I mean by that is that statehood originally came from this area because General Kearny proclaimed us as a territory of the United States right in this plaza. What you see here is going to be shocking to you when it's redone. And what people will see here is going to be shocking to them when it's redone. Because we intend to do it the way it was back in 1881 when it was built. You're going to see the chandeliers, you're going to see no walls, you're going to see one massive lobby. The way it used to be, you're going to be able to look upstairs from this first floor. The first floor, of course, is our main concern, and that's going to be the pride and joy in the first phases of the work that we intend to have done. Fixing up these buildings and the way people are looking at preservation right now, you'll get people to move in here. You know, the heart of Las Vegas moved from here to a shopping center, but it's going to come back.
Down here on this, what used to be a playing field down here, Billy the Kid's horse used to graze there. Now the story is, locally, and it's also authenticated, that when Billy the Kid was arrested by Pat Garrett, I think in 1881, he was to be hanged, and he didn't feel that he had any more use for his very famous mare. So he gave it to a lady named Mrs. Moore, who lived in Las Vegas, and she kept the horse down here on these fields down below us. And this is kind of interesting because when I had a daughter that used to like to ride horses, she was always looking over here on the field for horseshoes, and she'd bring home a small piece of horseshoe and say, I wonder if this came off of Billy the Kid's horse.
The Montezuma is not just a local resource, it's a state resource. And, you know, naturally we're trying to make sure that the right course of action is taken with the Montezuma.
risen from the ashes.
Risen from the ashes.
A great many people have worked for a long time. It's been, at least 10 years of groundwork, which has to be done. Surveying the buildings that exist, establishing ordinances, establishing guidelines for the people who want to do work on their buildings. All that has to be done. And I think we're at a point now where the actual physical work of repairing the buildings can take place. I think a lot of us feel that it's imminent.
Sincero yo sé y siempre te diré te quiero. Pues yo no sé engañar ni trato de olvidar tu amor. Yo sé que llorarás si viéndome fingir.
In the Southwest, I think it's fairly unique in that a great deal of its architectural resources remain. And, I think because of that, whatever local culture we like to think of in Las Vegas has survived, and this transcends the buildings. You can see it in language, you can see it in art, you can see it in the music around here, cuisine. People have retained a great deal of their roots.
Restoration and revitalization is much more than just the buildings. It's people, and it's the institutions, and it's the social structure of the community, and it's the various facets of human personality that go into it that makes restoration a significant operation. It's a process that has great potential, it seems to me, for a social development of a community, more than just the restructure of the buildings, the restoration of the buildings. It should restore people, it should restore relationships of people in a community.
Voy por la calle cantando mis canciones y los mariachis van pisando mis talones. Después de 20, 30 o 5,000 canciones y me cantan de caer en la nube el revolquín de canté de sentimiento. Me recordaron a un amor que yo antes tuve. En Terampa se recuerdan muchas cosas y los mariachis son los amos, señores. Tengo más 4, 5, 20 o 30 copas y las canciones me recuerdan sus amores.
I think we're living right now in a state of grace here in this town, that we are somewhat isolated. It hasn't been discovered and commercialized yet, and I think it's our mission to make sure that we do have some control over the future destiny of the town, because there is a population drift this way, and it will change in spite of ourselves and our efforts.
Y las canciones me recuerdan sus amores.